What you're looking at right now is the storm prediction center map right now. This is for today, Thursday, January 28, 2011. What you're looking at, you can see we have a slight risk of severe thunderstorms once again over portions of the Central Plains today, excluding from portions of South Dakota all the way to Nebraska and portions of Kansas, stretching east into portions of Iowa, Missouri, around the Chicago area, stretching east into Toledo, Detroit, and maybe even the Cleveland area. Now, the main problem with these storms have not just been severe weather, but there have been reports of flooding. We've had reports around this area of some areas including over a foot of rainfall with the very heavy thunderstorms which have developed over certain locations. But right around this region that I'm circling, I believe this is the area that's probably going to have the best opportunity for some severe thunderstorms to develop later on this afternoon. But once again, the main threat with these storms, any storm that develop, are not going to be that fast of a mover. So flooding, flash flooding, is definitely a possibility right around, especially portions of eastern Iowa, southwestern Wisconsin, southeastern Minnesota, and northwestern portions of Illinois, where once again some areas could get several inches of rainfall. Here's a look at some of the rainfall totals. This is in motion. You can see by the local storm reports, we've had reports of some areas getting over a foot of rainfall in some areas, over 11 inches of rainfall. And you can see there actually is more development east of the Waterloo area, around Cedar Rapids and points northeast. There appears to be some redevelopment of showers and embedded heavier thunderstorms developing to the west of the Davenport area. This is all spreading off to the east, so we're starting to see a training beginning to occur when these storms are going over the same areas. Pretty much like just like a railroad track. They're pretty much going over the same locations, producing bouts and bouts and bouts of heavier rainfall. So this threat will continue for the next several hours until the flooding will slowly begin to decrease later on this evening. Hopefully, they'll get a break from this heavier rainfall. Obviously, the bigger news has obviously been now in the tropics. We now have the fourth named tropical system of the Atlantic hurricane season. Excuse me, the fourth named tropical storm. This is Tropical Storm Don, which has formed. This now has winds of 40 miles an hour. Maximum sustained winds around 40 miles an hour. It's moving gently off to the west and west northwest. Different story in the Eastern Pacific is generally quiet right now. The National Hurricane Center is watching one area of disturbed weather right around this region. They're watching for the potential of maybe some slow development over the next several days with this disturbance as it moves off to the west. I've been talking about this during the last several days that the models have been trying to indicate something maybe trying to develop, and it looks like something maybe trying to develop now in the near future as it moves off to the west northwest. Still, it doesn't look like it's going to be a direct landfall into Mexico. It looks like it's probably going to hug the Mexican coast, but it may be close enough for some heavier rainfall, increased waves, and obviously the risk for some recurrence to occur. Here's a look at the latest water vapor imagery on Tropical Storm Don. You see it's not the most organized tropical system that we've seen, and you obviously see this little black and this brownish patch of color right here is obviously some dry air. So Don is obviously absorbing a little bit of dry air, especially on the north and northwest side of the center of circulation. That's why it's not the most terribly organized storm, but it's moving off to the west northwest. This is still dry air associated with that upper level low, which has moved into Mexico. So we'll see if this dry air begins to dry and include off to the northwest as Don begins to move to the northwest. We'll see if that occurs because it may be trying to develop a little bit of fanning outflow. If that occurs, it may give the storm a little bit more breathing room. But once again, as long as this dry air is in place, it's going to continue to absorb. Don's going to continue to absorb the dry air, and it's going to cause it to stay weak right around a 40-mile-an-hour tropical storm. That is exactly the reason why it's likely not strengthening. Obviously, it's got a little bit of northerly shear to deal with, but the shear is not really affecting it. It's just mainly this big pocket of dry air associated off to the northwest of the center. Here's a look at the latest shear. You can see there's Tropical Storm Don right here, right around the Yucatan Peninsula, just north of it. You can see where the blues are. This is actually decreasing right below 5 to 10 knots. So it has environmental conditions are pretty conducive for some development to redevelopment to some intensity to occur. But once again, the main problem is not the shear; it's mainly the dry air that's precluding with it. Also note that the system that the National Hurricane Center is watching around the Eastern Pacific, right around this area, is obviously still encountering some shear of its own, but that shear is expected to decrease over the next several days, which may allow for potentially some tropical development to occur. Out into the far eastern Atlantic, you can see there is a pretty good amount of shear in the northern Atlantic, obviously with these troughs in place, but there actually is a little bit of pocket of decreasing shear in portions of the eastern Atlantic, and that may actually help. Potentially, there's actually a system we're watching coming off the coast of Africa that mainly the Canadian model has been indicating some possible development on. The GFS ensembles, and the Euro model have not been doing that well on developing it at all. Let's go to it right now. Here's a look at the precipitable water imagery on it. There's actually two interesting things I want to show you. One, there's Dawn off farther off to the west. You can pretty much see it right around the Yucatan Peninsula. Look at the loop as it moves in. It's got a pretty nice circulation on it as it moves, beginning to wrap up very nicely. But once again, dry air, a little greenish and some dry air whacking into it. And also look in the central Atlantic, right around 10 degrees latitude. Pretty interesting wave coming off the coast. You see it's already got a nice spin on it already. Look at the last frame. It's got a nice spin up. It's beginning to have a very nice rotation on it. So it's already got a spin on it. And this is the one that the models are trying to pick up on, especially the Canadian model, which is obviously most aggressive models, but it's been the one that's been keeping an eye on it for the past few days the most. And that one is actually developing and moving into portions of the Leeward Islands, and maybe even some development over portions of right around Puerto Rico in the next several days. Here's a look at the forecast track from the GFS ensembles. I had to show this one because the other models are way too far out. It's zooming out over the entire Atlantic, so I had to show this one. This is one that's most close to home. But you see the general consensus, the general agreement with the models are a landfall right around south of Houston, Texas, right around the Corpus Christi region for a landfall. But this does not look like it's going to be a landfall in Louisiana or north central Texas. Earlier, some models were trying to pinpoint up there, but you see they pretty much all come together now that Don has developed. And obviously, it's tropical in nature. Now that it's developed, it's obviously the models have gotten a better latch on it. So it looks like a landfall is more than likely right around the Corpus Christi area, right north of the Brownsville. But Brownsville still needs to be on the lookout for it. Any variation of track could change the impacts of you folks out there in Brownsville. But once again, this is still going to provide some good soaking rainfall to move in. The projected path from the National Hurricane Center actually does send this system farther off inland into Texas and portions of New Mexico, which actually could use some rain badly. So this is actually going to help significantly with the rainfall, producing some areas several inches of rainfall. A lot of National Weather Service websites are beginning to indicate the potential for some significant rainfall. So we'll see whether these areas get some good soaking rainfall. So this is actually more of a blessing than a nuisance in nature. So once again, we'll see if we get some good soaking rainfall in portions of West Texas, New Mexico, and maybe in portions of Oklahoma during the next several days. Here's a look at the intensity. You can see actually the models are actually becoming in agreement of the peak intensity being right around from now to about 30 hours. It may have a little bit more chance of increasing, maybe up to around 50 knots, which is equivalent to right around maybe 50 to 60 mile an hour tropical storm before it crashes down, obviously as it makes landfall in about 30 hours. But once again, this storm will not have a lot of window for it to strengthen significantly. Obviously, the shifts and the ship model, not really reliable sources, are indicating this may approach Category 1 strength, but more than likely it's probably going to reach its peak in about 30 hours as a 50-knot tropical storm. One more map I wanted to show you was a look at the Canadian model. You can see, once again, the Canadian model has been very interesting over the last several days. You can see it's playing in motion. It's pinpointing two systems we're going to have to keep a close eye on. One in the eastern Pacific and one coming near the Leeward Islands. It's developing an area of low pressure right around Honduras as it moves off to the northwest. It's going to near the Mexican coast as potentially a tropical storm, and then it wants to develop an area of low pressure right over the Leeward Islands, northern Leeward Islands, as a potential for a tropical system. And then beyond that, some of the models want to potentially bring some rainfall into portions of the Bahamas, and then after where it goes after that is anyone's guess. We're not going to guess where it's going to go because we don't know if it's going to develop or not. We don't even know if environmental conditions will be favorable for it, but we're just saying that some models are beginning to pick up potentially on something wanting to develop over portions of the eastern Atlantic into portions of the Leeward Islands over the next several days. We'll continue to keep an eye on that potential. But once again, just look at the precipitable water imagery on it. You can see it already does have a pretty nice spin on it, a pretty nice low-level spin toward it. So that's pretty interesting this far out. It's already got a nice spin on it. So we're going to continue to keep an eye on that over the next several days. And obviously, once again, here's another look at the water vapor imagery on Tropical Storm Don. Once again, 40-mile-an-hour winds moving off to the west-northwest, running into some dry air and some little bit of shear, trying to weaken up the storm a little bit. Once again, sustained winds remain at 40 miles an hour. And once again, according to the latest intensity, some intensification is still possible over the next several hours before it reaches its peak in about 24 to 30 hours and then weakens as it makes landfall somewhere around Corpus Christi, Texas. So stay tuned for the latest updates. We'll continue to keep you updated on the latest on Tropical Storm Don.